The sweltering August heat in Atlanta, Georgia, seemed to mirror the pressure pounding inside Tyrell Bennett's chest. At just 26 years old, Tyrell had become the backbone of a family crushed by hardship. His father, a city sanitation worker, had died of COVID-19 complications 2 years earlier, and since then, Tyrell had been holding everything together. His mother, Sharon, was battling kidney disease and needed expensive treatments several times a month. His little sister, Nia, was in her final year at Spelman College and barely clinging to her dreams of graduation thanks to overdue tuition bills and mounting textbook fees. By day, Tyrell drove a delivery truck for Amazon. By night, he worked security at a hotel downtown. On weekends, he painted houses just to keep up with utility bills and the endless stream of medical costs. His phone rang constantly, collection agencies, overdue rent reminders, and credit cards he'd maxed out to buy his mom's medication. That afternoon, Tyrell stood outside a small soul food joint on Peachtree Street, counting change to see if he could afford some fried chicken and collard greens. That's when he noticed the sleek black Bentley Mulsanne parked at the curb. Its tinted window rolled down just enough for Tyrell to see a pair of eyes watching him, sharp, intelligent, and oddly familiar. The woman stepped out before he could look away. She wore a cream-colored designer pantsuit, her silver hair wrapped in an elegant updo. The way the crowd seemed to part for her said everything. She wasn't just wealthy. She was powerful. The gold pin on her lapel bore the initials MW. "Tyrell Bennett?" she asked with a southern lilt, her voice calm but commanding. "Yes, ma'am," he replied cautiously. "I know all about you," she said, her eyes never leaving his. "Your mother's dialysis bills. Your sister's tuition at Spelman. I know you've been struggling. I know you've got more weight on your shoulders than any man your age should carry." Tyrell took a step back. "Who are you?" "My name is Margot Whitaker, and I'm prepared to change your life. If you agree to marry me, legally and with proper documentation, I'll pay off all your family's debts. I'll cover your mother's treatment and make sure your sister graduates. You'll live in comfort. All I ask is your hand in marriage." Tyrell stared at her in stunned silence. She was 84 by public record, an empire builder in logistics, tech, and entertainment. A woman who had outbid CEOs and governors for properties in Midtown and whose influence stretched from Wall Street to Hollywood. And now, she wanted to marry him. The wedding took place in a quiet civil ceremony at Fulton County Courthouse. No press. Just lawyers, witnesses, and a mountain of NDAs. Within 72 hours, Tyrell was flown by private jet to a sprawling estate in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, a modern-day castle tucked into the woods, surrounded by armed security and staff who never spoke unless spoken to. The house had no corners. It was all glass, light, and silence. Marble floors from Portugal. Furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. The staff, all women, moved with eerie precision, bowing deeply when Margot passed and always addressing her as Ms. Whitaker. Tyrell was stunned by the surrealness of it all. Margot, though polite, kept their relationship strictly business. They dined each evening in a vaulted dining room beneath a hand-blown crystal chandelier, eating from plates that probably cost more than his car. She asked if he was comfortable. She inquired about his family. But she never let him in, not really. Most disturbing of all was the west wing of the mansion, sealed by a biometric door with steel-reinforced locks. 2 private guards stood outside it at all times. When Tyrell asked, he was told flatly, "That wing is reserved for Ms. Whitaker's private use." But Tyrell wasn't just curious. Something felt off. The whole arrangement. The timing. The way she had known every detail of his life, like she'd been watching him. This wasn't just luck. It was orchestrated. He began to wonder, who was Margot Whitaker really? Tyrell found his way in through her personal assistant, Jasmine, a 25-year-old woman from Baltimore who had worked for Margot for 3 years. Unlike the others, she smiled when she spoke to him. One evening, Tyrell asked, "I want to spend time with my wife. Privately. I don't know the rules here." Jasmine blinked, surprised. "She's been waiting for you to say that." That night, at exactly 10 p.m., Margot opened her private suite door. Tyrell froze. She didn't look like the elegant elderly woman he'd dined with for days. Dressed in soft silk, lit by candlelight, her skin glowed like it belonged to a woman in her 30s. Her voice was velvet now, gentle, emotional. "I've waited for this," she said softly, motioning for him to sit beside her. "You've treated me with dignity, even though you had every reason not to." Tyrell didn't know what to say. "You look different." She smiled. "Love makes the soul young. And yours, Tyrell, has brought life into this house." That night, for the first time, Margot didn't talk about contracts or comfort. She told him about the men who used her for her wealth, about building her empire from a barbecue truck after her first husband died in Vietnam, about being a black woman in boardrooms full of white men who underestimated her until they didn't. Tyrell shared his fears, his hopes, his exhaustion. And for the first time in weeks, he wasn't thinking about survival. They fell asleep side by side, holding hands. But the next morning, curiosity returned with a vengeance. 3 days later, with Margot away at a summit in Chicago, Tyrell found the West Wing unlocked. Heart pounding, he slipped inside. The room was a shrine. Photographs, newspaper clippings, love letters, framed memories from decades past. And in the center was the shock. A photo of his father, Calvin Bennett, much younger, standing arm in arm with Margot Whittaker. The caption read, 1986, Atlanta Convention Center. Dozens more pictures followed. Private dinners. Business galas. Handwritten letters in Calvin's unmistakable pen, professing love, promising forever. Tyrell staggered back. His father and Margot had been lovers. "So, you finally know." He turned. Margot stood in the doorway. "You married me for revenge," he said, his voice cracking. "To punish my father." Margot didn't deny it. "He humiliated me. I loved him. I trusted him with everything. But when I asked him to marry me, he laughed. Said no man in his right mind would marry an older woman in public. That he'd be called a gold digger." She looked away, tears beginning to fall. "I spent decades building my empire, watching your family from afar. I planned everything, waiting for the moment you'd be desperate enough to say yes." Tyrell felt rage, sorrow, betrayal, but underneath it, something deeper. Margot stepped closer. "But you surprised me. Your kindness, your strength. I didn't expect to love again. You broke through 40 years of bitterness, and I don't know who I am anymore." Tyrell reached for her hand. "Then maybe it's time to stop being who you were, and start being who you could be." From that moment, everything changed. Their relationship evolved into something authentic. She began teaching Tyrell about mergers, stock portfolios, and brand strategy. He sat in on meetings, made decisions, and learned how empires were built, not by money, but by vision. That winter, Margot fell ill. Despite the best care, her health declined quickly. One evening, as Tyrell sat beside her hospital bed in New York City, she whispered, "You've given me peace. I leave you everything, but more than that, I leave you healed." Margot passed away in January, and her funeral brought out America's elite. Tyrell stood before her casket with one of her old letters in his hand. "You began this story in pain," he said, "but you ended it in love. I forgive you, and I hope you forgave yourself." Months later, Tyrell and Jasmine, now close partners, turned Margot's Atlanta estate into a nonprofit think tank for Black entrepreneurs. He helped his mom get the best treatment, and Nia graduated with honors and now mentors young women from low-income neighborhoods. The name Margot Whittaker lives on, not just as a mogul, but as a woman who risked revenge, but found love instead.